I'm calling the school board meeting to order as our third board trustee just got here. So we'll give her a second to get seated. And with that, we'll start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And it gives me great pleasure tonight to jump into announcements with both feet. So, we have a very special person that I want to recognize with the announcements. And Tiffany Sobral, would you come up, please? Now, if you're like me and you've had your half-grown puppy stand in the middle of the street with traffic coming, or your kid not listening in the parking lot, this will resonate with you. So we want to recognize with M&O and Transportation one of our bus drivers, Tiffany Sobral, who on October 26th at about 3 o'clock, she dropped off her last student near DeGarmo Park and started driving down the Esplanade. And if you've been down that section of road, it can be a nightmare. Looking ahead, she could see a small child alone on the sidewalk pushing a small kid's wagon. And as she was approaching, the child started to come onto the Esplanade with the wagon. Tiffany stopped her bus in a position to block herself and the child from traffic, got out of her bus, picked up the child, got her on the bus, and then went to a safe pullout so as not to impede traffic. Tiffany then called our dispatch to alert them that she found a 2-year-old alone on the street. They called Chico police, and after a short investigation, they found the mother of the child, at which point Tiffany was comfortable to release the child to PD. And then she was back driving her route. Because of her actions that day, she made a huge difference in that child's life and her family's. We just wanted everyone to know that her heroic actions did not go unnoticed. We are proud of all of our drivers and the service they provide to children and families of Chico. All right, so with that, are there any other announcements? All right, it'd be really hard to match that, yes. Okay, so we move to our consent calendar. And is there anyone who wants to pull an item from the consent calendar? I would like to do a shout out to the Pleasant Valley High School Corps, who has been invited to attend the Regional All-State Honor Choir performance in Stockton, and then the high school band at PV to attend the Western International Band Clinic Honor Band in Seattle. So we are so pleased that our fine arts performances are getting this level of recognition. So with that, may I have a motion?
I move the consent calendar.
Seconded.
Okay, so moved by Matt Tennyson, seconded by Tom Lando. And so we will do a voice vote on this, unless there's any discussion.
Lando, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Dolby, aye.
Tennis, aye.
All right, so it passes 4-0. We have one board member who couldn't be here tonight due to health, so. Okay, with that, we move to our board workshop topic, the multi-tiered system of supports, special ed programs and budgets. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. Good evening.
Oh,
There, now is it on?
Now it is,
There
yeah.
you go. Sorry about that. So thank you for having us here tonight to talk to you about our district's multi-tiered system of supports and how special education programs fit into those supports for all students throughout the district. Our team, I would like to introduce today, if they'll all come on up. I'm Diane Olson. For anyone that might not know me, I think everyone knows me. I'm the Director of Special Education. We have Tina Keene that provided supports also, and she's hiding right now. She's the Director of State and Federal Programs. Our lead on this board for special education was Gina Payton. Our lead for the multi-tiered system supports piece of it was Christy Bangsrud. And then the rest of our coordinators from special education, Jennifer Scala, Dana Feingold, and Joanna Ming. And I remembered that's, wait, no, not Ming, no, that's Ming now. I remembered all their names. That
Very
doesn't
good.
happen very often.
Very good.
So I just want to say that. I also want to acknowledge and thank both Caitlin and Tom. They met with us for lunch and went over the topics that they would like presented during this board meeting. And then Gina sent the presentation to them in advance, the draft, for any feedback that they might have on corrections or additions and changes within. So thank you both to Caitlin and Tom for that. With that, I'm going to hand off to the rest of our team to start presenting on what we're doing. Who has the clicker?
I have the clicker. I'm not convinced I know how to use the clicker, but I'm going to give it a go. Okay, well, we have the absolute pleasure of getting to talk to all of you tonight about special education and how that fits within our multi-tiered systems of support that we provide for each and every student in our school district. I would also like to thank Caitlin and Tom for that really long lunch we had and the great discussions around special education. It's so fun for me to talk about special ed and the amazing stuff our department does every day, and to hear from you guys as educators and board members was just a really nice conversation that helped us build this presentation. I wrote down my words so I don't get tangential like I did at our lunch to take 2 hours. As I mentioned, we have multi-tiered systems of supports for all of our students within the school district. And with each one of these tiers, 1, 2, and 3, we support student growth under each of our 3 LCAP goals. We like to use backpacks to represent those goals, as you'll see later on in our presentation, that we focus equally on academics, social emotional growth, and behavior. Look at me doing so good. So as you notice in our picture here, most students within our school district make adequate progress, or the progress that we would anticipate them making within our Tier 1 supports and all of those wonderful things we do to address all 3 backpacks. And then tier 2 is some of our students within that large group are going to need additional supports to make that progress that we would expect of them. And tier 3 is even within that small group, some of those students, even after tier 2 supports, might need even further or additional targeted support for their more individualized needs. And then when we get into special education, just one other thing to mention is we do within each of these 3 tiers look at all 3 of those backpacks within each tier, if that makes sense. And then students move through these tiers fluidly based on the progress that they're making or the lack of progress that they're making. And that happens fluidly throughout the school year based on the data that we're taking and concerns shared with the team. And then special education is provided through an IEP or an individual education plan, and that's our overlay of what you see on top of these multi-tiered systems of support. And we'll talk further about how you can get into assessment land and get qualified for an IEP throughout this presentation. So this plan, an education plan, is developed by a school team of professionals with parent and outside agency input, and they do thorough assessments in the areas of concern for the students. Assessments are reviewed to determine strengths, areas of need, learning styles and preferences. Goals are developed and services are offered based on what we find out through those assessments. That's me keeping it very simple for you. A very complex plan in very simple words. So as you'll see, when we have special education, we provide instruction and supports aligned to individual student need using ongoing targeted assessments and progress monitoring. We collaborate in a team approach driven by detailed data in students' least restrictive environment. And we have fluid movement between these tiers within any individual student's least restrictive environment. So when I say least restrictive environment, and that's going to come up quite a bit in this presentation, that means that we're teaching students in that lowest tier as often as possible to give them that maximum access to the general education curriculum and instruction. It's our job as LRE to provide accommodations, modifications, and services within our MTSS tiers before we pull a student into like a separate or segregated setting for their instruction in special education. Just because we don't want to limit that, we don't want to limit their access to the general education curriculum and rigor unless the benefit of pulling them out outweighs those potential harmful effects of removing them from their peers. So next, am I supposed to ask for questions in between slides? Okay, so next, Dana's going to come up and talk to you about our continuum of special education services and how we meet all the diverse learning needs within our community. Click.
And this one?
There's an overlay, so it'll,
This is mine.
that's under yours.
Okay, well then can you go to my overlay section? There you go. Okay, so here's the slide that I have on my paper. So the continuum of services, we showed this slide last year at our board workshop, and basically this just shows the variety of services, programs, and settings that meet the needs of our individual students. And through the IEP, that's the way that we determine the placement of our students. And the IEP is driven by that educational disability eligibility. And then through the IEP, we look at their goals and objectives and their student needs during the IEP and at that time. And every time we have an IEP, it could change. So that's also a fluid process when we come to the IEP.
Good evening. My name's Christy Bankson. I'm the MTSS coordinator for the school district. And just to take a step back through looking at our district in the multi-tiered system of supports for all students in K-12, our system, our framework has been developed and it matches and aligns with the LCAP plan. So academic, behavioral, and social emotional supports for each and every student every day. And what that looks like for every student that walks onto our campus is going back to that first image that Gina showed with the tiers. So if you think of tier 1 is the supports that every student gets on campus. That's through their core curriculum, the positive behavior interventions and supports that are in place on school campuses, having our school counselors. That's all there for tier 1 supports. And we know that some students need additional support because to be successful. So at school sites, there's a team who, when they notice, based on data that a student needs extra support, they might get additional supports, either academically, behaviorally, or social emotionally. And that's we call tier 2. And that's in addition to being a part of all of the tier 1 supports that are on a site that every student has access to. And then if the team is looking at student data again, and there's some students who, even with those supports, need extra supports, that's when we move into tier 3 supports, which are very highly structured, explicit, systematic instruction, really focused on what that particular student is in need of at that time.
Wait, there's one more piece. So just, oh my, girl, she's way taller than me. So one of the ways students might qualify for an assessment to determine eligibility for special education is through this multi-tiered system of supports and this SBIT process. So if students have moved through all of these tiers and they're still not making that progress that we would anticipate them being able to make, then at that point we might refer them to an assessment for special education. And Joanna is going to come up and talk about the process that looks like that after they might start an assessment.
Hi, Joanna Meng. So as Gina said, when a student does not make expected progress in response to our interventions within Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, the school-based intervention team, which is tracking that student's progress, can make a referral or a recommendation for an evaluation for special education eligibility. This multidisciplinary evaluation is completed within 60 days from the time that we receive parent consent for the assessment. And if that evaluation indicates that a student has a disability and needs special education services, then an individual education plan is developed, which includes services and supports for that student's educational needs, again, as Gina said before, within that least restrictive environment. Once a student has an IEP, we do continue to monitor progress. We do review that plan at least annually, and we do a reevaluation to determine continued eligibility and to determine the student's ongoing educational needs at least every 3 years.
Okay, so some of the things that both Tom and Caitlin asked us to present about are some of the things that we've done in the last year, 2 years since COVID. And so, first of all, and I don't know how to do the links on here. How do I open a link? Thank you. I'm not going to go through this whole page, but I went through our calendars. We have agendas that we meet, the special ed administrators meet weekly. And so I went through our agenda and added in here for you to look at on your own all the things that we've done in the last couple of years based on our agendas, okay? You can go back to the workshop. Okay. But some of the highlights for this year is that last year we added 2 new mild moderate teachers based on growth, a school psychologist and a speech and language pathologist. That's all based on growth, student growth, the number of IEPs that we have in the district. This year we added 2 new K-3 classrooms for extensive needs. Those are both at Sierra View. We added 2 TK inclusion classrooms. Last year at our board workshop, there was a lot of discussion about the inclusion programs that we have at the preschool, and is there a plan to grow them? So at Marigold, we opened 2 inclusion programs at this school. And it has had growing pains, I'm going to be honest on that. We have teacher medical needs based on surgeries they had, and so we're doing some subs and everything, but it is actually working really well, and we have a collaborative approach that we are working with those two teams. We also added one extensive classroom, needs classroom, at the 6th through 8th grade at Chico Junior, based on students graduating up that had some extensive behavioral needs that they needed. We also have our access programs for students with disabilities. We transitioned 2 years ago, those from the county, and we run those completely ourselves. And that means we have the clinicians, the behaviorists, and the teachers all under our umbrella here in the district. The most exciting piece of news, can I share it yet? Okay. It's on the slide, so I hope I can. We are having the startup of a district-wide behavior intervention team, and this is something that Gina's been dreaming to do for a while, to help all students in Tier 3, general education and special education. So I'm going to let her talk about that a little bit.
Okay, I have been dreaming about this for a while. One of the challenges we face, we haven't even got to challenges yet, but you'll see, is behavior has kind of gotten more extreme. I mean, we've always had behavior as a challenge to access curriculum and things, but post-COVID, it feels more intense, or maybe students at a wider range are experiencing behavior. And we're also hiring a lot of interns because of staffing shortages, that it's nationwide staffing shortages. So creating a behavior team to help facilitate our IBI aides, which are intensive behavior intervention aides. They make a little bit more money than our paraprofessionals. They work a little bit longer hours and a little bit more days per year. They'll be itinerant, working with our multidisciplinary team, and we can push them in to classrooms that have high needs behaviors, or students that are struggling with behavior, to run a coaching model. So we'll go in and do an assessment, develop goals, strategies, and supports aligned with data collection, and then we will push in an IBI aide under the supervision of a specialist and myself, and they will coach and model all of the interventions and strategies with kind of an I do, we do, you do model, and then every 6 weeks we'll relook at data and progress and either send them through another cycle or maybe fade them out as that team gains the knowledge and skills that they need to be able to address those. Yes?
Sorry,
Yes,
just a real
yes.
quick question about that. So are these folks primarily focused at the elementary school level, or is it kind of broad range?
You know, just in having a feel for where the majority of our behaviors happen, it will be largely elementary school, but we do have pockets of behavior throughout junior high and high school, and the adult program as well. So it'll be a referral basis.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to know, with Access, there's already about 12 to 14 IBIs, behavior aides in those positions. We added another 10 in order to do this program. The other thing that is accomplishment is that we've really refined over the last couple of years the professional development process and our district-wide staff development days. And so just real quick, I want Joanna to talk about that, just because she spent so much time on kind of refining it and making sure teachers are getting what they need.
So of course, professional development and training continues to be very important for our teachers and our staff. So related to special education, this year for our district-wide staff development days, we've offered a range of different special education specific trainings for different groups of teachers and specialists. We're also offering a paraprofessional training days for our paraprofessional staff on our people-free days. So for elementary, that's November 10th, which is a staff work day, but a student-free day. And then for secondary, December 22nd, which is a staff work day, but also a student-free day. So we've scheduled paraprofessional trainings for our aides for both of those days as well. We also have offered and will continue to offer site trainings based on individual school site needs. If there's a need that arises at a particular school site, we'll find someone to provide training for the staff at that school site. And it might be special education specific staff, or it might be staff, might be all the teachers at like a staff meeting. So we'll continue to work to offer training and professional development.
Okay, and one of the other things that I started to implement prior to COVID, and then COVID put a kind of a halt to everything that we could do in person, was special education parent meetings. And so we finally are able now, since we're meeting in person, we don't have all the COVID restrictions. We had our first one on September 29th. Another slide will talk a little bit more about that. We have another one on November 29th, and then February 28th is the special ed LCAP meeting with the focus on special ed. We also have had a lot of accomplishments within our preschool money because of some additional grants that have been funded there. So I'm going to let Dana talk about the preschool program.
Very excited about our preschool program, Marigold Loma. We have an extensive TK program, so we brought over our blended program over to the Marigold side, and we opened up an extensive TK program with 12 students. And then we went from one blended TK program to the two that are here. We also have moved one of our state preschools onto the Loma campus, which is going to allow us to have more of that inclusion for our students when they're ready to move into that inclusion opportunity. We still have Innovative, which is on the Loma campus. They have 2 classrooms for this year. And then we have some new preschool funding that came through from the state, that we have our early intervention behaviorists that we've contracted out for that is helping with some of those behaviors in the preschool to get them ready for kindergarten. We ordered Frog Street Curriculum, which is a curriculum for our preschoolers. Our Head Start's in town, and the state preschooler is also using the same curriculum. We also have hired a teacher to come on. She's a retired teacher, and she does part-time. She's running SEL groups, our Komochi program that we have in the elementary. They're doing the preschool version. And then they're also doing some language groups and play groups for students. Our future plans are we're looking to hire an intervention OT. There's a lot of research out there that if we can get that fine motor going, that it helps students moving into the elementary to reduce SPED referrals. Then we're looking at hiring a targeted case manager on a part-time basis. And then also we're getting ready to get our preschool grows as the school year moves on. We're going to hire an inclusion preschool teacher. And then next year we'll have them to also do more of that inclusion in more of our state preschools and Head Start. So exciting stuff happening at preschool. Yes.
It's a little bit ancient history, but it's coming back at my family again, and that's 504s.
Yes.
And the first one, who's now almost 30, her 504, when we had the meeting, only one person showed up. The others weren't, quote unquote, required to show up. And it mostly showed up in testing environments where, you know, her stomach and stuff, she couldn't be there that long. But the difficulty I see with that is if they look like they're doing, quote unquote, fine, okay, and they're not excelling like they could, then it doesn't seem like the 504 comes into play soon enough. And then I had another one who literally left high school because he's sick almost every day. I mean, you know. So my special concern now is we have a 1-year-old who is going to have a 504. And it's just, we've had great service in the home, but then when they get to school, and if it's medical, it seems to be a lot less, I don't know, wrap your hands around it, get a hold of it.
Are they
You
on
know.
an IFSP? It's kind of what I'm thinking, possibly. Instead of a 504, they're probably on an IFSP, which is a pre-IEP for our 0 to 3-year-olds. And then when they hit that 3-year-old, we do a transition, and sometimes students are transitioned out of their IFSP because they've made the growth that they need. Other times, they are assessed to see if they need the IEP at 3, and then they have other students who graduate between 3 and 5, and they don't need the IEP anymore. So there really is this transition and fluidity even in that 0 to 5 for students that have special needs. So, yes. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's just, I don't know at what point a parent would be able to effectively say, I don't think my kid is doing what they could do.
And there are a lot of, you want to go ahead?
So that's where we partner with Far Northern Regional Center, especially for the youngest ones. And they help guide parents in those conversations and identifying those needs. The other thing is that 504s don't exist until they hit elementary school age, so TK kindergarten. And so there can be that period of time, unfortunately, where they don't qualify for services through the infant program IEP or through the preschool age IEP. And so it really is incumbent, unfortunately, on parents to research out through Far Northern and RAL and Child Disabilities Rights Advocates to see what can happen that pre-3 age. Once they're 3, though, we grab them in. The other thing that's not on this is that Far Northern Regional, we've partnered with them, and they are presenting a 12-week program for families, parents, that are pre-IEP referral that might be looking towards that direction, and they're going to support parents and collaborate with us in providing information on IEPs and this whole scary, scary process, as parents that have been through it can tell you, of getting an IEP and understanding this whole process, because it is, I left a IEP to come here, and I was exhausted at the end. I can't imagine what it was like for the parent, because there's so much top-level thinking that has to go in on it, and it's not always understandable.
Does every parent whose child has an IEP know? What % of the parents whose child has an IEP are aware that their child has an IEP?
100%.
100%.
They have to meet every year. However, saying that, they forget quickly after they have that IEP meeting.
Okay.
We meet with every single parent at least one time a year. Most parents even more often than that. However, I will say that when parents move into the district, and I'm not faulting the previous districts, and they fill out the paperwork, says, does your child have an IEP? They'll leave it blank, and they'll say no. It happens all the time.
That's what I'm thinking, like if you were to stop some random parent in the street and say, hey, does your child have an IEP? And you polled them, what % of the people would get it right, that they really
Yeah.
don't? And what I'm trying to ascertain is how aware, I'm just curious, our parents are of these IEPs,
Yeah.
Are these an intense, rigorous experience for the family, or is it kind of like, oh, okay? I mean, or are we a legend in our own mind, in terms of running these things?
It depends, because students that have only speech and they're really just working on articulation and everything else about their child is typically developing, they may not be as aware of what this paperwork means to them. So I could see that happening. Unfortunately, as much as our psychologists, our case managers try to help parents through the process, some of our less involved parents may not understand the importance of what they just went through is. But our psychologists really do try, especially in initials and especially in preschool, to meet with the parents prior to the IEP, talk about eligibility, talk about disabilities, and talk about what the IEP is happening. But yes, I agree with you. Some of them just don't know.
I was just genuinely curious. I wasn't
Yeah.
trying to, demean anybody. I was just curious.
No, it's a good question, good point.
Just to add, it is a good question, and we do, our goal is to involve parents along every step of the process. We do need parent consent to even evaluate a student for special education. So, so there's a lot of parent education involved with that process. When a student is referred for an evaluation, we want parents to make informed decisions about what's happening with their child. So we have to get written parent permission And then after the evaluation is complete, if a student has an IEP, then we also, again, at that point, need parent consent to approve of that IEP. So there are multiple places, multiple steps where we have to get parent consent.
I had a student who did speech therapy. This is not, and I had to sign various, paperwork for that. That is not an IEP, correct?
That is an IEP.
It is an IEP.
Unless a student
Yeah.
is receiving short-term speech therapy,
And it was.
kind of
and it was-
informally.
I think it was a year,
Okay.
But no one ever said, to my recollection, maybe it was written at the top of the form, but hey, just FYI, your child is in an IEP now.
So it might have been just short-term school-based speech therapy, but most of our students that receive speech therapy services do receive that under an IEP.
Interesting. And these occur in all 3 tiers of the multi-tiered system of support.
If a student has an IEP and they need any one of the tiers, services in any one of those tiers, they could access it. Now, every student in Tier 1, Tier 3 doesn't have to have an IEP. So they wouldn't know about the IEP process until they got referred. And even in that referral process with what we call the school-based intervention team, the SBIT, if they're referring, they do let the parent know, we need to do more. We're referring to an IEP team, and they have a psychologist come in and talk to the parent at that time also. There's lots of lingo going on in this, and we try really hard not to use acronyms. We fall back to old habits sometimes, and so, and I think, Kathleen, you've asked the same question before, is how do the parents really know? And it is something we've worked on, but it's such a hard problem. Like the lady that I worked with this afternoon, there were things that she was asking that she truly didn't know that were clearly written in the plan. So we just had to go through step by step and slowly. It's just parent by parent. It's complicated. It's like buying a house when you sign off on the IEP. There are a whole bunch of signatures and initials that we have to have them go through and explain to them when they sign. So it is complicated. And how much of your house, when you bought it, did you actually read all the paperwork?
Every last word, I assure you. Well, thank you for the explanation.
One of the other things that Caitlin and Tom asked about was the challenges. And of course, special education is a challenge all the way across the board. Raising a child with special needs is a challenge. So one of the biggest challenges we've had this year is our impact of growth. Right now, we have 2,147 students eligible receiving services. That's from 3 years old to adult, and it's speech IEPs to mild, moderate needs to moderate, severe needs, okay?
Diane, could you repeat that statistic? It's not written on the board.
Yeah, it's 2,100, I just got them today, so 2,147 are eligible for special education services right now in the district. That also includes students that go to a DHH program in Durham. They're including the numbers. Or students that attend schools that we've referred to them out of the district, such as BASES or a non-public school. Okay, so those are included there. We also have 160 students, which we call pending. Pending students are students that have gone through the SBIT process or some other process to identify you have a disability, number one, and that disability is impacting your access to education. So there's 160 pending assessments. An assessment takes a minimum of 20 hours just to do the assessing. So it's 160, and it involves anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 assessors. Then you have the report writing, you have the IEP development. And so parents, they have the 60-day time period to do these assessments, and it takes just about all of that time to do it. And so it's frustrating for parents because they know that there's needs, but we have the 60-day timeline because we want to get it right. So I did want to talk about that a little bit. Our increased student needs, it also creates some problems with facilities, space, and staffing. I needed 2 classrooms this year, and I had to go to every single site and kind of move some other programs out of the place so I could have room for special ed services. I do appreciate that facilities has done a good job as they're doing the remodeling and their modernizations. Callie has given a priority to making sure that every school has adequate special education spaces identified in all the modernization, so we don't go into back corners. It has to go through the modernization process before we get there, though. This increased student needs also affects our caseload, class sizes, the number of students a special education teacher is seeing, and also the number of special education students in a general education classroom. That creates some growth in skills that we need to do within our staff. The other area is recovering from COVID. And this isn't just special education. Across the board, students returning from COVID and that period of time where we had less instruction going on in a group setting, it has impacted students' ability to socialize, understand the demands of being in school, and it creates behaviors, it creates a difference in educational growth over those periods of time. So we are really focused on trying to work to meet those deficit areas. Also, COVID caused a lot of trauma, and we've had so many traumatic events in this district. So that trauma has impacted special education and could be one of the reasons for more referrals. We're seeing a lot more social and emotional referrals to special education. And the biggest thing, you've already alluded to this, Matt, is that the individual nature of the IEP. If I go to any parent and any student and an IEP, no one of them looks the same. No student gets the same services. And so having to have our case managers have an understanding of all the services that are available on their campus and throughout the district, it is a challenge, okay? Staff professional development, we're working on that as you heard, but that is also an area that we are constantly maneuvering to meet the needs of staff knowledge. And if you could pull up the parent meeting, parent concerns are an area of concern, and it's really tiny. You can pull it up on your computers. This is the parent night that we had on 9/27, and this is a summary of the items that parents brought up, and in blue are the items that we've addressed. They're not fully addressed, but these are the steps that we've taken already to address some of the things that they've presented at that parent meeting. Okay. And then back to the board. And then on to the next page. Okay, so one of the things that out of those challenges, increasing and improving parent relationships. And so I'm going to have Jen Scala, our newest member to the team this year, present on that. And if you have 504 questions, she's our expert.
So, as you can imagine, there are so many details in every single plan, and we're dealing with unique individuals inside of their unique family system as well. It can be kind of an opportunity for misunderstandings and disagreements to occur. And one of the key things that is essential to ensure that when disagreements or misunderstandings occur, we are able to come together still as a team and process through whatever those misunderstandings or challenges are, is that relationship with parents. And so the state actually was starting to see a significant increase in requests for due process or complaints from parents, especially during that COVID time where we had students not able to access their services that they really needed. So the response from the state, at the state level, was to create an alternative route to improve capacity of schools to bring staff together with families and basically do, their words, alternative dispute resolution. But what that really means is training staff how to work in a mediation type of role with families, where people feel understood and their perspectives respected, and then you can move forward to agreement. So what we have had the opportunity to do is have all of our coordinators and our directors trained in alternative dispute resolution. It's a really intense training, very, very valuable. It gives us the opportunity to be creative rather with problem solving and coming to understanding and keeping it at the local level within our district without parents feeling like they have to go, to the state or go find somebody to support them. In addition, we have a lot of layers of support in our community beyond just our staff that we can rely on, that we can ask for support with, that help us continue to build that relationship of trust and understanding. One of those here locally is our special education local plan area here in Butte County. That's run by the Butte County Office of Education. We refer to it as SELPA. SELPA has also trained their program specialists and their director in alternative dispute resolution. So if we're struggling at our level, we can ask them to come in as a really neutral party to assist us. We can also tap on Rowell Family Empowerment Center. Their offices are located out of Reading, but we're really fortunate. I've been around the state working in other areas, and they have advocacy groups that can be really adversarial. Rowell is an advocacy group that really tries to walk alongside school districts and parents to make sure everybody understands and we're able to support each other and maintain relationships, which has been very, very beneficial. We can ask them to attend IEPs with us. We can refer parents so they have somebody who can answer questions that maybe we weren't able to explain in a way that they could understand. So Rowell has been incredibly supportive of our schools and our parents. The IEP that Diane was referring to from earlier this afternoon had Rowell advocate with the parent, and it was incredibly beneficial because we were able to really then work together to support the parent in moving the student forward. Far Northern, oh, yes.
So I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine that there's a group of butterflies in the room. And I want you to turn around and look at the top of that wall up there and tell me what color a butterfly you would notice.
I think I would say blue.
Yeah, because you wouldn't say yellow, right? Because it wouldn't stand out.
Right.
But it is a yellow butterfly. And I know that speech is our most common special need, but in our family experience, teachers got really excited about our kids' progress, and they would say, oh, I wouldn't even have thought that he ever had speech. I mean, just, I can't see him as a context. But then speech shows up in other ways down the road, in reading and things like that. So it's not something that people did wrong. It's just that it's not so dramatic anymore. It's not, doesn't stand out the same way. And I think that happens, a lot, especially if they're not a behavior issue.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I believe you're referring to is, as educators, what we see is this experiential view of this student. And we don't have all of the history. We don't have all of the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into creating the little human that we have in front of us. And we say, this isn't something we can't work with. This isn't something we can't address. And sometimes, as parents and family members, it feels off-putting to have somebody say, oh, this is no problem, because it's like, oh, you have no idea where we have been, how hard this has been, what I've had to fight for, the tears. every, going through this grieving process, so, and therein lies kind of that initial feeling of you don't get it. You're not getting how hard this is. You're not getting the tears on my child at the kitchen table working for 2 hours every night. And that is very, very real. And so we have to, as special educators, constantly remind ourselves we are lucky enough to be a part of this young person's life for this chunk of time. And how can we support parents and family with the entire story of where they've been and help keep them moving forward? Sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So on another note, we also have Far Northern Regional Center. So Far Northern Regional Center is a phenomenal agency. They provide a wealth of services to our very, very little people who come out with developmental disabilities, and then Far Northern takes that giant leap backwards and says, okay, school, they're all yours from 3 to 22, and then they pick up services again. Some of the challenges, and I was just kind of hashing this out with another parent the other day, is we have this amazing set of resources and services for our individuals with developmental disabilities, and yet we don't have this necessarily for our individuals who have mental health related disabilities, who can be just as challenging and tear-jerking as our children or our youth with developmental disabilities. And so I think that is what I said is, if I have a legislative brain in my head, I would love to go after that, but I don't, because I like where I'm at. So we do have Far Northern Regional Center that is really amazing for us to be able to work with, and I think there's a lot of potential there. Another aspect or side arm, so to speak, of Far Northern Regional Center is the Office for Clients' Rights and Advocacy. They have an office here in Chico. They are phenomenal. They are a lot like Rowell Family Center, which is really empowering. They will work with parents and help them understand and explain and do trainings. They have a lawyer who is absolutely phenomenal and really takes the time to explain things to parents. And so there are times where we have parents say, call on my lawyer, and we're like, could it be this one? Because this one's really empowering and educating and reasonable, versus sometimes other ones are not as easy. So there are tons of resources that are out there for us as the special ed community to be able to refer parents to for services, and for us to be able to collaborate with, to make sure that we're not missing something. Because sometimes you kind of get in your, no, this is what we need to do, this is how I see the child, and having somebody come from outside and say, have you considered this, is really powerful. So I'm going to turn it back to Diane so she can talk about our newest adventure.
Yes, so we're very excited that out of our parent meeting and some of the suggestions that you guys have had to be more inclusive of parents and how can we improve relationships, that out of the parent meeting came our Special Education Parent Advisory and Collaboration, CPAC. And so what I would like to do, the first thing here is just the community engagement meetings for all groups. So you have a link to that. But what I would like to do next is introduce to you Julia Rogoff. Julia Rogoff is a parent of a special needs student that is being very well taken care of at Marsh. She comes to us from San Diego. She's one of the parents that I talked to you about that moved here, called us many times before moving here to find out what we have and what we can do and what kind of setting would be there for her child. And so if you can go ahead to the parent slides. Parent slides, one on there? Okay, nope. There you go. And Julia will speak to you now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia. This is my child, the greatest human that's ever lived, Lillian. She currently goes to Marsh, and she is in your Mod Severe program. She is autistic, and she would be labeled severely autistic, but I just label her amazing and awesome. So when I moved here a year ago, so I've been here for a year, and I moved here because I needed to find a more affordable place for my child that was smaller. San Diego is very populous. A lot of people, that's not really my girl's vibe. She doesn't need a lot of people all over the place. So I had a really good friend who had moved here with a special needs child who was super happy, and she said, come check it out. So we did, and we really enjoyed it. And I must have called Diane 10 times, wrote about 1 million emails. I am, and as I say, overly involved mother. I ask 1 million questions. I haven't met a committee that I haven't loved. So if there's a committee that has special education, I'm on it, okay? Or I'll start one if there isn't one. So I just really am involved, and I like to know everything that's going on with my child, and I want to make sure that she's getting every single thing possible. But I don't only want to make sure that she's getting everything possible, I want every child who has a disability to get everything possible, right? And I had some things to say, right? First of all, Marsh Junior High, amazing. Taryn Blisbane, I cannot say like how amazing this woman is. Her staff is amazing. The school is amazing. I can't keep saying amazing, but it's true. One thing that happened, so I was there, she had a little extracurricular activity, and I was there, and she was off. I try to give her space. She's in junior high, and she doesn't really want me around all the time anymore, for some reason. And she was, pretty far, but I had my eyes on her, and I see these 2 women running from opposite sides of the campus towards her. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, something wrong? No. When I finally caught up to them, they said, she's never alone. We've never seen her alone on this campus, so we knew there was something wrong. Sorry, it's really touching, because here are 2 people that don't work in special ed, they don't know my child, but they recognized that there was something wrong here, she wasn't safe, and they went for it. So that is the amazing thing. I am so emotional when I talk about my baby. Anyway, that's how great your staff is at Marsh, right? And I hope that everybody is getting that experience, but I know they're not, right? Because I have spent the last 10 years educating myself on special education law, on the how to enact a proper IEP to make sure she's getting every service by law that she is, required to have. But not every parent has that opportunity to learn, right? And to devote themselves to do that. So that's an issue. And to your question, I want to explain to you what it's like to be in an IEP from a parent perspective, just so you understand. When I walk into an IEP, not me, let's say somebody else who hasn't studied for as long. When I walked into her preschool IEP, okay, when I didn't know a thing, I walk into a room and there are 10 people with the district, 10, who know everything about special ed, everything that could possibly, they are throwing around terms I have never heard of. And the first thing they do, they have a long list of all the things that are wrong with my child. She can't talk. She's not potty trained. Her behavior's off the charts, right? So I have to listen to about a half an hour of all the things that are wrong with my child. I don't know what's going on. Oh, this is bad. Okay, right? And I'm afraid. I don't know anything they're talking about. I don't understand what they're saying. I have a 10-page, 15-page document in my hand that I have no idea what it says. I have no idea what it means. And they're like, okay, we're all done here, sign it. Sign this binding contract that you have no idea what it means. That's what an IEP is like for a parent. It's not great, right? So I always try to remind people, educators and staff, that you're not dealing with somebody who knows what they're talking about all the time. You're dealing with an exhausted parent who doesn't My child didn't sleep literally for the first 10 years of her life, and she screamed 24/7 for the first 8 years, right? So how do you give parents that empowerment to understand what's going on? It's very difficult. So that's a tangent. So when I entered the preschool with my daughter at 3 years old, my district had this already up and running, a CPAC, right? And what it is really is just a collaboration between parents and district to build trust between the two, to educate parents so that they don't feel like that when they go into their IEPs, to educate parents so that they know and have access to the information that they need, that the district already has. The district already knows all these rules, right? But we have to take the time. You're paid lots of money, right, to understand these rules and these laws. But we have to do it on our free time. We have to learn how to do all these things on our free time. So the CPAC is there for parents like me and other parents who have been privileged enough to be able to learn and advocate for their child, to do it for others. And it's a group, and it's not an us against them. The idea is to work together to move special education forward. We have an issue in this district that I could say, it's meaningful inclusion, and I know the word inclusion is talked about a lot. And like we said, Diane said in our meeting, eyes kind of glaze over because you don't even know what to do with that. But I'm not looking for my child just to be there. That's inclusion. I'm looking for my child to have the same experience that the other kids get. She might get to join a sport, but she's never gonna play. She might get to be in the choir, never gonna get a solo. She might get to be in theater, but she's never gonna get on stage. Sorry. I know, right, she's amazing. But you see what I'm saying? She's there, but she's not included. How do we include her and kids like her? That's my question, and I think that's what CPAC can help you address, because we're the experts in our kids, and we're the experts in how to make them have the same experiences as typical kids in our schools. That's it.
I want to compliment you on your ability to, convey this experience, which is so intense for parents. I know one of the most stunning things that a speech therapist ever said to me about my grandson, and I have a PhD, was language is hard work. And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. But for a kid that has a speech issue, it's like pulling rocks out of the mud.
Right?
And then his little brother, there are no rocks. Everything flies through the air. He's just, So it can be incredibly different in one family about how the kids handle that.
And I want to say, she's doing amazing. She started nonverbal, all those things. She's reading, she's doing math, she has friends. She's doing great. So the system works, and it does work when it's implemented correctly.
And I really want to thank her because
Oh, yeah.
this was a lot of her work to help come forward. We're having another meeting. I would like to invite all of you to that meeting. Can all 4 of them and 5 of them attend at the same time to a meeting like that, too? So I would like at least 2 of you to come on November 29th to our parent meeting. We're going to have Raul there. They're going to be talking about the IEP process and about their services. And then Julia is going to be presenting on the CPAC and trying to recruit more parents for that. We already have a executive committee, which is 5 parents, and then the coordinators and myself. And so we're going to be making plans on how to present materials for exactly the questions you were asking about and the questions you were asking. How do parents know these things? And they don't know it unless we provide some of that training to them also. But one of the greatest things, like you said, heard Julia talk about how her daughters improved. I have some adult students for you again, because they are always ones that can talk about how it's been for them going through schools, and they're going to talk about that. They're also going to talk about some of the challenges they've had, because that was one of the questions that Tom and Caitlin wanted us to focus on. So I want to have Kat Bones. She is our newest adult program teacher, and so she's going to introduce her students.
Hi guys, my name's Kat Bone, and these are 3 of my amazing adult transition students, and they've all worked very hard and prepared amazing speeches.
I've been asked to make sure we can all hear you.
Oh, I'm really quiet too, sorry. So these are 3 of the amazing students in my classroom this year, and they've all worked really hard to prepare these great speeches, and I'll introduce their names and I'll let you guys go. So to my left is Addison, and we have Sasha and Miracle. And Addison, you wanted to go first, right?
My name is Addison Joan. I am 22 years old, and I am in an adult program at Loma Vista. I have been in Chico Unified for about 14 years. I went to 3 different elementary schools, Moss Junior High and PV High School. I always struggle with changes, moving schools, different staff, and schedule changes are hard for me to deal with. I had to move schools a lot, and that was difficult for me. There are lots of things I love doing my years at school. The most helpful was social stories, and really helped me prepare to move to different schools, like going from Moss Junior High to Pleasant Valley High School. Another thing I really like was working for rewards. Some rewards was playing basketball, going to the garden, or on the walk. That helped me to do my schoolwork. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, Jesus. Michael, where are you going? Oh, God.
This is Sasha.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sasha Williams. I am 20 years old, and I am currently in the Adult Transition Program at Loma Vista. I have been at Chico Unified since I was 17. I've attended PV for a little bit, but I've pretty much just attended the adult program. One challenge is when I lived in Texas for about 4 years before moving here, I didn't attend school because to mine and my parents' knowledge, there weren't any programs like this one set up for people like me there. I didn't have any friends my own age in Texas, so as you can imagine, my social interactions were quite limited. One thing that has helped me since I moved here has been all my friends. It has helped improve my mental health considerably. This district has provided busing and vans for people in wheelchairs. It has helped me go to school and go on awesome field trips. My teachers and service providers have helped connect me to cool programs like Reading Pals and job training. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Sincerely, Sasha Williams.
Up next. Hi, my name is Miracle Trailer. I am 21. I am currently in the adult transition program. This is hard.
Hey, you know what? You're going to do this just fine. You are.
If it helps, I'm up here crying too.
I have been in a transition program since first grade. I have went to Seaview Elementary and went to Bidwell Junior, Pleasant Valley High School. One of the challenges, sorry.
Would you like us to read this for you?
Yes, please.
Would you like Kat to read it for you?
Yes, please.
All right. One challenge I had was when random kids would come up to me and ask what was wrong with me. I had casts on my legs often. It was just me and part of my disability. It made me angry and affected my confidence and self-esteem. It also affected my learning and made it difficult to learn. One thing that helped me was being social and making new friends. Feeling included and valued by my friends made me feel like I had my confidence and self-esteem back. It made it a lot easier to learn when I felt good about myself. I also ran track in high school, and I'm getting ready to run for the college team. And might I add, Miracle is a pretty boss runner. So, yeah, cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Miracle.
Okay, you don't get away that easy, Miracle, because I was the track coach at Chico State, so are you going to run for Chico State?
I have no clue.
You have no clue, okay.
I don't know if I'm going to transfer yet.
Uh-huh.
I have no clue what I'm going to do for my major.
Okay,
yet. So,
well,
yeah.
what do you run?
The 100, and I also did shot put.
Okay, you know what? You didn't hesitate or cry one bit of that answer. See what I said?
Yeah.
All right, you go do it.
Thank you.
What I would like to add here, and as I work with these young people, young adults, on what they would talk about, I want to add that for Addison, the one thing that he really pointed to is that these transitions between schools are challenging, and he didn't feel like he got enough support to meet the people that he was going to, the teachers he was going to work with, and that was one thing that we could work on for the district. For Sasha, she disappeared fast. For Sasha, her challenge was this idea of inclusion and does she belong anywhere? Texas really excludes their students.
Yeah.
And so coming back to California and being able to be included, she took classes at PV High School as an adult. We worked with PV, and they made a lot of exceptions, and they made accommodations in order for Sasha to be able to be included. And as you can tell, she's a very intelligent young lady and did well in those classes.
All right.
And for Miracle, the struggles that she's come through, the physical struggles, the teasing, the bullying, and still she has stayed with school that whole time through. And bullying is one of the hardest things through special education for us to support, because it's an innocuous thing that you can't really identify and label in a very easy way. So we really, I think what Miracle would like to remind everyone is that you see bullying or you see picking on, which isn't bullying, but it's still very hurtful.
Yeah.
And so if we can be the strong person to address that and call it out when it happens, it's very helpful to their self-esteem and their growth. Thank you, all three of you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have some questions for
They get to
staff.
go out to dinner now. Did you have?
Nice. Not for them, but for staff generally related to them. I want to talk a little bit about the transitions that he brought up from going from one school to another within the district, and even coming here as well. And I was asking some questions about it and getting some very good answers from you and Kelly and Jay Marchant. Is now an appropriate time to ask about that?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you characterize it? Maybe a warm handoff You know, maybe the idea of a warm handoff of, I guess, you know, IEP is a broad category, even broader than I thought. But are there other things that are in this category too? Basically, anything in the category of special education, you know, and for that matter, you know, just extreme behavior problems that a child might exhibit. I mean, would those typically fall under a category of an IEP? Or just a,
So behavior is not an eligibility area.
Okay.
You have to have a disability.
okay,
And just having a disability is not an eligibility area. You have
Okay.
to have a disability that's impacting your ability to progress educationally.
okay. With respect to special education, because that's what we're talking about, are we making the warm handoff effectively? Do people at the school where a child is moving on to or transferring over to, is that file, so to speak, is it effectively traveling from one school to another?
That's a great question, and the reason I asked Joanna is because she is a receiver of transition. When she was psych, she was at a junior high, so she did the handoffs from 5th grade and received them in 6th grade, and she also did the handoff from 8th grade to 9th grade. So I don't think you really want to know the whole process of that handoff, but I wanted her to talk a little bit about that, and also about the challenges she saw within it, because she's trying to revamp that system right now. So I want you to talk a little bit about that.
So I'm going to tie in MTSS here as well, because for everything, not all of our special education students have similar needs. And so, you know, in terms of that transition from elementary school to junior high, and that transition from junior high to high school, we do have supports at all 3 tiers. We have Tier 1, which is available for all of our students. You know, when our elementary students visit our junior highs, or our high school, our 8th graders visit our high school campuses. And so there's opportunities there. There are parent information nights that are available, not just for special education, but for everyone, for those big transitions. Then for our students with special education services, of course, there's an extra layer of careful communication that takes place. There's, talking about the file, and that, you know, the paperwork, previous evaluation reports, that student's current IEP, the team recommendations for the services and supports needed at that next level, does transition. That's the easy part, because that file, which is connected to our online Special Education Information System, SACE. So all of that information is kind of immediately readily available to the receiving program and the receiving site. The part that's a little trickier and takes a lot more time and collaboration is that communication part, from communicating to the parent what supports and services we're recommending for that student at the next level, and the communication between the student's current service providers and their receiving service providers. So all of that communication, there's a lot of that communication that happens within the IEP process, and then there's communication that happens behind the scenes, in terms of, okay, these are, you know, the student's preferences, this student's needs. And again, it's very, very individual for each one of our students. And so it takes a lot of time and collaboration. And again, it happens kind of on multiple levels, with whole group supports, with the information, transfer of information, and then that collaboration and planning, that a lot of that happens just on that teacher to teacher. And again, we want parents to be involved at every step of the way in making that transition.
For the teacher to teacher, that's never happening from Chico Junior down to Citrus or something like that.
Sure, like that 5th grade Citrus team, the special education case manager and the special education service providers at Citrus for that 5th grader are going to communicate with the receiving Chico Junior service providers. And so if a student has speech therapy at Citrus as a 5th grader, that the receiving speech therapist at Chico Junior is going to receive all of that information that's included in the file, but also that sending speech therapist is going to communicate with the receiving speech therapist about their particular recommendations for that student.
I'd just like to add that I feel like our processes are pretty good as far as team to team. I feel like where we need to improve, and one of the things that Joanna's working on, is where does the student fit into that and where does the family? I think that's the question you're asking.
Where does the student fit into the what?
Into the transition. How does that student, we can pass paper. We can pass a paper student all the time. And honestly, we're pretty good at reading papers and figuring out what the student is, but that doesn't mean you've met them and built a relationship with them. Pre-COVID, there were a lot of transition barbecues, transition meetings, transition visits. Coming out of COVID, we're slow to get those going again. And so we do need to work with John Shepherd and with Jay on how is that transition going to be reinstated, and at what point is that going to be reinstated. We do have a lot of parents that ask for one-on visits, so I take a lot of parents to schools to visit individually, and so do the coordinators. But it is, like I said, I have 2,147 eligible students. So coordinating those transitions, I can see that parents may feel left out of that transition at times. Especially if they're that parent, like Julia was referring to, doesn't have the time to be, this all happens during the school day. Many of them work. So how do you build that time in? That is a challenge, how parents feel more included and their student.
Thank you.
I can tell you, being in a lot of those transition meetings with Joanna, getting students coming in from LCC or Sierra View or feeder schools at the elementary level, and then having our students passed off from Marsh to PV or Chico High School. Some of them were very short. If they were quick, and the transition was going to be easier ones, some of them would take a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, and making sure that the family was comfortable in the transition. And when they became junior high students, we actually had students become more of their own advocates in the IEP meetings, especially in the transition, what they were looking for. So we would have, those transition meetings would be over days at the end of the school year, trying to get subs and everybody into those classrooms and to meet the IEPs for the parents to get them in. But it was very good meetings where Chico High PV's counselors and case carriers that were going to be taking over the children really try to make the family and the student comfortable. We wanted the student, because at that point, it was more about the student being comfortable transitioning into the high schools and how they felt and what their kind of supports. As you can tell, those students talking tonight, I had one of those students in those transitions coming in from elementary and going into high school, and spent a lot of time with one of them. Time he was able to leave, he was wanting to talk about things that he wanted when he was moving on to Pleasant Valley. Again, they could be any time limit of a meeting. Some we would ask the parents to come back if they didn't feel that the schedule that they were looking at was going to meet their child's needs. And more that we have inclusion, those meetings are becoming very extensive. But they're, I believe, as you call a soft handoff, some of them are very soft, some of them are, it's very scary to pass them on to the next level.
It's quite often that we'll have a meeting at the end of the school year and they're still not comfortable and they want to meet that teacher more. And so we'll have another meeting before school starts. And so we'll call teachers back and say, hey, can you come back a day early or 2 days early so we can have this meeting? Because this family is a little bit more concerned about the transition.
Sorry.
Caitlin?
I don't want to lose what I have in my head. I want to just add, this kind of feels more brainstormy-ish to me, the concept of it being student-centered in that, especially coming from the elementary school level, they're coming from how many different schools, they don't know their peers, and so are there opportunities for those students to be in a small group setting with some of their incoming peers that they don't necessarily know yet? So it's not just all the things that are all new all on the first day of school, but they kind of get slowly introduced, and I'm sure IEP is a case-by-case basis, so just depending on their needs and the parents' involvement and what the parents also are encouraging to do the paper push, do the initial these are your teachers next year, but then maybe over the summer there's 1 or 2 group meetings or parents plug the parents together and let them kind of do some interactions, and so that the students on the first day of school, they're in this whole new setting, but at least they've seen some familiar faces, building into that.
What we do is, I'm sorry, Caitlin, is that we have what, going into junior high, it's called WEB, where everyone belongs. And as Diane and I are very happy, every student is a student at Chico Unified, so they're involved in every one of those programs. So they get to meet the 8th graders, and they have a team leader in that 8th group. You've probably seen in March where they'll have an advocate as an 8th grader when they come on as a 6th grader. Then they have link crew at the high schools that they can go over. The only thing what you're talking about that is getting more of, and hopefully with the next steps, and we just talked about with the parent group, talking about how parents can get together on those transitions, is what you're talking about. It's something we could probably talk about at one of those parent meetings. I also want to add that we did listen to some of our teachers too in these transitions. So this next year, it'll be the first time where we're offering, with Jim and Kevin Moretti's MOU approval, is we'll be adding 4 days at the beginning of the school year before school year starts, so our special ed teachers and our aides can meet with the students and talk about the students and what the transition is going to look like. And we're also adding a day at the end of the year for those transitions. So we're giving them 5 extra school paid days for those type of transitions. So when that student comes in, the aide understands, the teacher understands what the needs of those child are going to be. That's one of the things that the teachers asked us for, and we were able, and our coordinators, and we were able to give that.
I'd like to one thing I would like to say, and you can respond to it or not, but I know how it feels to be the engaged parent, who's like mindful of the problems that your child is having, and you're contacting the school, and I sense that the SPED community, there's justifiably a lot of that. But I just want to throw out that there's probably a number of students in our midst who, for whatever reason, they don't necessarily have that strong advocate, even though the needs are all still there and just as vivid in their life. And so I know that you guys are cognizant of this, but yeah, you have my full support to keep an eye out for those little ones and try to be that champion for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. The last thing that Caitlin and Tom asked us to talk about is our next steps and goals. And the biggest challenge I see for the special education team moving into next year, as I retire, is this hire and retain quality staff. We hired a lot of people this year, and next year will be the same thing. Special education teachers have a lot of work to do. Their day, a teacher that really meets all students' needs, runs, for a significant amount of hours beyond the school day. And so it burns them out. So we're coming up with trainings, PD, additional days in order to try to retain staff. Coaching and modeling and skill development for both general and special ed as we talk about more inclusion, and as Julia mentioned, not just including and being there, but including and having an active role. That takes coaching and modeling. And so we need to do more professional development in that area. Working around the LCAP goals and how do students fit into every layer of that. We need to work more closely with Christy and with our team on how do all the services impact every student, including special ed. This again is for the future. Universal PK, preschool and universal TK, that's coming. It's a reality. Where are we going to put those students and how are we going to serve them? It's going to be a lot of work in the upcoming years. And then continuing this work with parents and the special education parent meetings, the CPAC, and really building this relationship and collaboration between the district and parents. Those are our next steps and goals. So.
Of the program, but I know that Marsh had a program where quote unquote ordinary students were working with the special ed students. And it was
It was
really
called Social Group.
Yeah.
And Taryn Blisman, actually, the teacher, got a golden bell for the state for
yeah,
that
we
program.
got recognized for that. So I had a granddaughter who was an outstanding athlete who was participating in that as an activity. And I'll never forget when she was playing a major game, soccer, here at PV. They let the class out, and they all flooded, you know, because they felt like she was theirs. They knew her, and it was just tremendous to see them participating, just like all the other students, you know, cheering on their favorite player. So,
I wish Julia was still here because she presented at our first meeting a collaboration that addresses junior high athletics, how we've started it, and no one's cut so everyone can play, but you still have those students that don't feel comfortable with or without disabilities to play. This was, Jay likened it to Challengers Baseball, where you have an abled student and a student that needs support, and they partner, and they do these intramural on-site games. And so that's something we're going to look into a little bit to see how can we provide these opportunities on the campuses within some of the other things that we're already doing.
And we added those programs in our high school PE classes, correct?
Right.
because I think that's one of the hardest things when the special needs student feels like nobody looks like them or acts like them or sees them, quote unquote.
I just want to add to that, I know that we're up here saying how many different things we're doing and how many things are working, but we listened, we added 3 more parent special ed meetings this year, community meetings. We're adding a parent group meetings, and we're adding our new behavior specialist program to help support classes in need. But we're always learning, we're always changing, we're always trying to get better, because I don't want to have it sit up here and saying everything's perfect in our world of special ed, or even in general ed. We're constantly improving, we're constantly sitting in rooms trying to figure out what is best. We are reaching out more to parents and asking through their lens what we need. Do we need to do more? Always need to do more. We always need to be better. So I don't want us to think coming out of this that, oh, we have this perfect plan and everybody should model ours in every district. I'm just saying what we're trying to do is continue to grow throughout. We continue to add programs. We continue to add supports for all of our kids and every student, right, every day.
Any additional questions? Thank you for allowing us to present tonight.
Hey, thank you, and all of you. Yeah. Do we have anybody that wanted to make a public comment?
We
Okay.
had no speaker cards submitted for this board meeting.
Elaine
Okay.
does.
Thank you.
We have one public comment, apparently. Elaine Mercado Ward.
Come on.
Just because Matt stared me down. So no, lots of very good information shared. To your question that you had about parents' involvement. So yes, parents know that their child has an IEP, but it's a question of how much do they know, like Julia mentioned as well. Also, you have to think about a parent's previous experience that they've had with their child's IEP and with the team. Because I feel if a parent has not had a positive experience, there tends to be carryover into the next meeting, to the next level, to the next level. So that's a huge impact as well. And as the district works towards building trust, because I met with some individuals and that was something I emphasized with them is like, I feel the district has a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt for some parents. Because a parent could have a bad experience and they can be like, that's never gonna happen again. I'm diving in and I'm learning because I'm gonna know my rights and I'm gonna know what I can ask for and I'm going to stand my ground. But then there are other parents that maybe aren't as confident in their capabilities to learn what they need to know as a parent that has a child with an IEP, and they tend to be a little more timid. And because they're more timid, let's be honest and real, like sometimes parents get taken advantage of. That happens, it's a reality. And so a parent's experience in the process really has an effect as well as how much they are involved in the process. And I think that needs to be acknowledged too, because if a parent does have a bad experience, that kind of puts them on the path of whatever I do, it's never gonna work out and everything's against my child. Or it's, I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'm going to take a stand, and I'm going to learn what I need to learn to be able to better support my child so they get what they deserve going through this educational process. So parents know their child has an IEP. It's just a matter of how much they know about their child's IEP. That's it.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the discussion action calendar, oh my God, calendar. And we start with business services, and I saw Maria here. All right. And thank all of you for coming and putting your time and effort in.
Good evening. This agenda item is for the turf replacement at PV High School. In the summer of 2016, the track was resurfaced and the field was converted into synthetic turf. Now, out of the safety and concerns for trips and falls resulting from tears, the turf at PV High School needs replacement. It has become clear and that significant use has created wear and cannot be repaired any longer. Our maintenance department has performed over 600 individual turf repairs in recent months, along with regularly scheduled grooming and cleaning over the years. The PV High School field is a jewel for the Chico community and has a great demand for use. The field was heavily utilized while the Chico High School field was constructed. The use likely contributed to its current condition. The fields, both at PV and Chico High, are inspected and repaired annually. All indications are that the Chico High School field is in great condition and will not require replacement for a couple years. The turf utilized at Chico High School has held up to use with much less wear. We plan to utilize Sprint Turf, the same manufacturer that was utilized at Chico High School, for the PV project. This project has been reviewed by the Facilities Committee and/or consulted with the Facilities Committee. The total cost for this project, $597,945. It is proposed that it's funded with state reimbursable monies. We respectfully request that the board approve the CMAS purchase agreement for the completion of the PV field replacement project.
All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Just so we have kind of an idea moving forward, what's the average lifespan for this kind of turf? You said
So it's approximately 10 years,
okay.
and this turf that we're installing does have a manufacturer's warranty within the quote that I believe you guys received, and it's listed for 8 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions from the audience? I will note that discussions at the professional level about not just the physical maintenance of turf, but even the different quality kinds of turf have been going on quite a bit because of the number of injuries. So I really think this is a very timely and critical need. How long is it likely to take, Maria, for the field to be redone?
So one of the advantages of using the CMAS purchase agreement is that we're able to jump schedule in these contractors' schedules. Phone calls have been made. Contractors that specialize in this type of installation are booked for a couple years versus summer. So because we're saving time and procuring through the CMAS, it'll give us the opportunity to jump in and take advantage of our spring break and finish throughout the month. So, construction times vary, but we're assuming month and a half.
All right. Well,
So hopefully by graduation.
That is the goal.
Okay.
That is the goal, is graduation and not to affect any type of training that occurs over summers and fall.
all right. Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move acceptance of the agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Tom Lando and second by Caitlin Dolby. All right. So we were unanimous last time, so we can just do a voice vote. All those in favor of the purchase agreement for the replacement of the synthetic turf at PV High School indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Maria, thank you so much. Okay, so now we're moving on to the hearing and discussion and action of the revised updated board policy number 0440.1, Internet Acceptable Use Policy.
Dr. Kaiser, we're going to ask to postpone that one. Mr. Vincent cannot be here tonight.
Oh.
He had a family emergency, so we're going to
Oh.
wait until he's here. He is our expert.
Yes.
So we'd like to pull that item.
Okay, thank you for, all right, so that brings us to the discussion action, approval of revised updated new board policies. Does anyone have one they want to raise an issue with, or? Okay.
I have a really important contribution to make to this discussion, if I can find my note on it. So I just found a typo. And it is in, shoot, guys, I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. It is in 6158, policy 6158.
Okay. Which, what was the number again? 6158
Page
independent
3,
study.
toward the bottom.
Okay.
Toward the bottom. This requirement only applies to students participating. No, that's not it. Sorry, I'm kind of, I lost my note on it, but give me a second here and I'll show you where it is. Yeah, 15 school days of more. Yeah, there you go. Should be 15 school days or more. Thank you, Ms. Dalby. With that amendment, and without it, I'm voting no on all these. I'd like to move adoption of the proposed policy changes with that one tweak.
Did you ask for a motion, Madam President?
I did.
Sorry. Okay, I'll second that.
All right, so we have a change in 6158, and we've had a motion for all of the board policies, correct? All right, and it's been moved and seconded. So any further discussion? All right, any comments or discussion from the audience? All right, seeing none, we can again have a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. So, with that, is there a board member who wants to agendize an item? Okay.
All right, so I would like to place an item on the agenda for the November 16th meeting to give board members the opportunity to express interest in being nominated for officer position and state their case in no more than 3 minutes.
Okay, so for board members who will be at that point in time participating in the internal election of officers to express their intent, is that what you?
I mean, that's in fewer words than what I said, but what I said is what I would like to
Okay,
move.
can you say it again then? So-
Yes. I would like board members to have an opportunity to express interest in being nominated for a board officer position and state their case in no more than 3 minutes.
All right. Okay. So we have a motion. Do we get a second?
Sure, I'll second that.
All right, so second by Lando. Erica, did you get all of that?
She says yes.
Okay, thank you. I can't see her.
And so for context, I added the in no more than 3 minutes so that we can invite, we'll have at least one new board member, so we can invite any future board members that will be at the organizing meeting in December to come and as a public comment, can also state their case if they would like to be considered for a officer position in those 3 minutes.
All right.
Any other, I don't know, if there's
Any
questions or
further discussion? Any comments from the audience? All right. So we can have a voice vote again. All those in favor of including this chance?
Actually, sorry, can I say one more thing?
I'm sorry, what?
I wanted to say one more thing. Just for reasoning, in my experience when I joined the board after being newly elected, I didn't feel like there was enough opportunity to learn about each individual person who was interested in an officer position, president, vice president, or clerk, and also how the matrix for board president sort of fits into all of that. And I would encourage anybody who would be interested in the president position to state their case and ideally hit those points in the matrix that is part of our board handbook. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give more context about why I even brought it up. I feel like it would be a good opportunity to sort of state the reasons, qualifications, so that all of us have the opportunity to think on it until the next organizing meeting, and then even new board members coming on have had the opportunity to hear that before we all are on stage together.
All right. Okay.
I'd like to comment first.
Yeah.
I'm not hostile to this idea, but I'm going to abstain from voting on it.
I'll just make a decision.
We got comments from at the time of the vote. When we were choosing presidents, I remember hearing comments from people, stating their qualifications and interest and things like that. So I don't know that it's necessary, but again, I'm not hostile to it, and I'm prepared to hear, arguments, for enacting this policy if it comes before me.
I'm confused about the last thing you said.
If your motion tonight is successful and it comes before me, I'm looking forward to making an objective decision at that time.
It's not a decision in the November meeting, it's just a space in the meeting to do presentations if anybody wants to speak.
I think it's a decision whether to formally put that in place, right?
No, this is just for the next meeting.
So this is an agenda item where people interested in being the president can make a statement as to why they want to do that. Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, so with that, we have a motion and a second to agendize this item at the next board meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
You abstain, okay, so it's 3-0. Okay, all right, with that, we will go to closed session, and thank you for staying.